In a pivotal moment for the Russia-Ukraine war, the United States has approved Ukraine's use of long-range missiles capable of striking deep within Russian territory. This decision raises crucial questions. What prompted this dramatic policy shift, and how will Europe respond to this new escalation? The global impact of this move could reshape the course of the war and international relations in unpredictable ways. Join us in today's episode of Think Tank as we explore the consequences of this decision. According to the New York Times, the Biden administration has approved Ukraine's use of long-range ATACMS missiles to target deeper into Russian territory, aiming to weaken Russian forces and strengthen Ukraine's position for future talks. However, the decision is overshadowed by Donald Trump's impending presidency, which may alter U.S. support for Ukraine. Ukraine plans to strike key Russian military infrastructure, including North Korean troops in Russia. But its window of opportunity is closing. The Kremlin condemned the move, warning of escalating NATO tensions. While some Ukrainians welcome the decision, others regret the delay as the conflict future remains uncertain. The United States' decision to authorize Ukraine's use of long-range missiles for strikes deeper inside Russia is a significant escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war. While it strengthens Ukraine's military position, it has sparked deep divisions within Europe over the risks of further provoking Russia.
The ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict has reached a critical point with the U.S. decision to send long-range weapons, including ATACMS missiles, to Ukraine. This move aims to strengthen Ukraine's military position and gain an advantage over Russia, especially in contested areas. However, the decision has caused divisions within Europe, where opinions on the use of such weapons differ significantly. The Biden administration's approval of the missile transfer is part of a strategy to bolster Ukraine before potential peace talks, which may be influenced by Donald Trump. Trump has stated he would end U.S. support for Ukraine and push for immediate negotiations, contrasting with Biden's strategy of military escalation to secure Ukraine's optimal bargaining position. U.S. officials hope that Ukraine can achieve territorial gains, particularly in the east and south, before negotiations begin. Several European nations, including France and Germany, have opposed deploying long-range weapons that could strike Russian territory. These leaders worry that such actions could escalate the conflict into a wider war. Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany prefers defensive support for Ukraine, while President Emmanuel Macron of France advocates for diplomacy over military escalation, particularly to avoid provoking Russia. This divide reflects broader geopolitical rifts within Europe. Eastern European countries like Poland and Baltic states support stronger military aid to Ukraine, while Western European nations prioritize stability and avoiding direct confrontation with Russia. While the US shift marks a major change in Western support for Ukraine, Europe's divided response highlights the complexity of the situation. These internal divisions will play a crucial role in shaping both the future of the conflict and potential peace negotiations.
In providing more analysis about the most recent updates in Russia-Ukraine war, Joining us from Moscow is Sergei Markov, a political science professor, a former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin. And joining us from Washington is Lori A. Watkins, a former advisor to U.S. President Barack Obama. A very warm welcome to the show, and we start off with Ms. Watkins. What motivated the United States at this point to approve Ukraine's use of long-range missile strikes into Russia?
You ask me? The mostly important that this is a direct lie of Washington that Ukrainian army use these rocket missiles. It's not true, because Ukrainian army technically cannot use ATACMS ballistic missiles and also British and French Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles. The reason is very simple. Ballistic missiles need satellite group for intelligence and for targeting those missiles. It's everybody knows that Ukrainian army has no satellite group, so these rocket missiles, not only American, but they also targeted to Russian territory, but American army. Before this, Americans can say, "Oh, we don't recognize that Donbass and Crimea is the territory of Russia, it's territory of
Okay,
Ukraine."
sir, I'll be back again, but I still
America
want to ask Ms. Watkins, what motivated the United States to approve Ukraine's use of long-range missile strikes into Russia at this point, and now, and at this decision, and it took this decision now? Mr. Markov, given the recent amendments to Russia's nuclear doctrine, how likely is it that Russia would resort to nuclear options if its territorial integrity is directly threatened by non-nuclear states, sir?
This nuclear doctrine is making more or less using of nuclear weaponry. First of all, in case if Russia under the aggression of non-nuclear country, which is supported by nuclear country, it's of course the case of Ukraine, but also another possibility if a Russian ally attacked by somebody with same conditions. It's Poland, for example. But now conditions for the using of Russian nuclear weapon doesn't exist, because there are no real threat to Russian independence. These ATACMS rocket missiles, they directly used by American military officers. It means that this is aggression of United States Army against Russia on Russian internationally recognized territory. And this is an act of war of United States against Russia, but nevertheless, it's a very small action of aggression of United States, and it means that Russian nuclear doctrine say that this is not conditions for using of Russian nuclear weaponry. But Russian not nuclear weaponry, like rocket missiles, can be used now against American satellite group and American military base on the territory, for example, of Poland or Romania, on another territory. Even in Washington, theoretically could be now attacked by Russian not nuclear rocket missiles. But of course,
sir, Mrs. Watkins, welcome to the show. What is your assessment of President Putin's decision to amend Russia's nuclear doctrine? And does this increase the likelihood of a nuclear standoff?
Well, there was an audio issue on your end, so apologies that you couldn't hear me earlier.
Yes, I'm very happy that you listened and you heard.
as well as the question about Putin. President Biden is using his time wisely because he very well understands and is aware of what will happen when former President Trump transitions into and is sworn in and inaugurated on January 20th as the next president. He has been very clear about that. He is extremely supportive of Putin and his efforts to continue to try to annex pieces of Ukraine as Russian territory. We all know that that's what's going to happen. President Biden, on the other hand, wants to.
Why did President Biden decide 2 months before his presidency ends this very awkward decision to escalate and put oil on fire at this point? No one understands yet.
The reason why it's awkward is that he waited this long. It's not awkward, though, for the decision that he made, which is to try to help the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian military, as well as President Zelensky, before what I had just started to go into was a future of Donald Trump and his cozy relationship. That's a nice way of putting it. And that he's already said publicly that he believes that the end of the war would mean that Ukraine should give over its sovereignty and its territory to Russia. That is not what the United States in general, overall, especially the Biden administration, our allies, that's not what they want either. And that's absolutely not what the Ukrainian people want. So President Biden is using the tools that he has in the next 2 months to help the situation as much as he can.
He's worried about Ukraine.
Would not have waited as long as President Biden has done, but this is where we are, and he's trying to live up to the promise that he made to the Ukrainian people that he would do everything that he could in his power, and this is one of those executive actions that he's using that lever of power.
Mr. Markov, do you want to answer what Ms. Watkins said now?
Just want to stress the main thing which Mrs. Watkins tried to ignore. It's not Ukrainian attack, which we could see this early morning in Bryansk region. It's American attack. This is the threat. Of course, I don't think that Russian response will be very strong right now, because in Russia, we understand very well that one of the major goal of Joe Biden team is to create international crisis which will allow them not to give opportunity to Donald Trump to become real president. It's some kind of the coup. This attacking of American militaries by American rocket missiles to Russian territory has the goal of the coup d'etat in the United States of America, blocking opportunity to change the power. This party of war, which head by Joe Biden, which is who is maniac. He hate personally Vladimir Putin from 2011. If you want, I can explain.
Why, sir? Do you think so? Why?
So?
Why do you think so?
Hello? Because in 2011, Joe Biden visited Moscow and asked Vladimir Putin not to run for the next presidential term. And after this, Vladimir Putin gave him very strong response, not very diplomatic. And after this, Joe Biden personally hate Vladimir Putin. Also, another maniac in Biden administration is State Secretary Blinken, because his grandfather was in Kiev. He was Jewish, and he left Kiev because anti-Semitic pogroms. It was under the Tsar.
Mrs. Watkins, what are your comments on Mr. Markov?
Yeah.
All I'm hearing of this gentleman are headlines that he's read, that he's trying to connect the dots somehow to Joe Biden. The whole entire world knows what Vladimir Putin has done to the people of Ukraine, to the military, to the people and the families and children, and the thousands of people that have been slaughtered because of his Russian army that he sent in to take territory and take and eliminate the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. Everybody knows that. You can say it's because of Joe Biden and 2011. That's not when this conflict started, and we all know it's been over 2 years, on the verge of now 3 years as we round this next year and go into 2025. So with all due respect, sir, this is not blaming Joe Biden for the war that Vladimir Putin started against Ukraine to try to take their sovereignty and their land and continue to annex, as he already tried to do in Georgia and Crimea, is just laughable.
Okay, how do you read the
Everywhere.
situation as we await? Okay, sir, you can answer. Go ahead and answer.
Of course, that's a lie. Our opponent absolutely ignore that in Ukraine we have not democratic regime but dictatorship, which prohibited hundreds of free media and dozens of opposition political parties. This regime continues for 10 years, and they also try to cancel Russian language, Russian culture, Russian identity in Ukraine. Ukraine be part of the Russia during 1,000 years. Kiev is first Russian capital, which had been capital of Russia during 300 years. And now this is a pro-American, repressive, 100% repressive and democratic regime try to, by terror, try to kill a lot of Russian peoples who
Okay,
use
sir,
Russian
could you
language.
please give me? I'll be back. I'll leave you there, but I'll be back again. Before we dive deeper into our discussion, let's take a moment to examine the capabilities of the ATACMS missiles that President Biden allowed Ukraine to strike Russia with, and its impact on the battlefield. Stay with us. We're back again. Ms. Watkins, I think you have the right to answer what Mr. of course, Markov was commenting on.
You want me to respond to him?
Please.
Or talk about ATACMS? Oh, okay. Well, what he was saying about the history of Russia, again, he was not including any of the facts of how this conflict started and left out the entire history. Selectively chose to put in bits and pieces that suited him and suits his narrative, and unfortunately that's not the truth. And I think
what's
your
the
viewers
truth, Ms. Watkins?
Sorry?
What's the truth?
The truth is that the Ukrainian people were the ones attacked by Vladimir Putin and his Russian army. Everybody saw this all around the world. There's video footage of how it started. We've been in this conflict for almost 3 years. I believe it's February will mark 3 years since this conflict started.
True, Ms. Watkins, true.
That's a long time. So yes, I'm glad we're not disputing that fact. The fact that the United States has continued to support Ukraine has been a tremendous boost to their ability to defend themselves. And myself, along with others who have worked in the national security space, I used to work at the Pentagon, we knew how serious the issue was as far as being able to defend themselves against the Russian military, and that they needed these ATACMS, they needed those Humvees, they needed those tanks, those ballistic capabilities a lot sooner. And there was a delay by the administration. I was part of a group of people that signed letters asking President Biden to issue these sooner.
Okay, Ms. Watkins, I want to ask you a question here. How will Trump's second term as president shape...
We got a long time to respond, and I'd like to respond. And the reason why President Biden did that and waited so long was politically speaking. He wanted to use his diplomatic levers as much as possible to not allow Putin to paint him into the corner of saying, see, he's now involving the United States in escalating this war, which would have taken the focus off of Ukraine being able to defend itself.
Okay, Mr. Markov, can you answer, please, Mrs. Watkins, please?
Yeah, Mrs. Watkins, in our discussion, we touch the reason of such conflicts. This is exactly what Vladimir Putin was talking a lot of time. He told we try to solve this problem during 8 years. We signed Minsk agreement, it has been violated by Kiev. We signed Minsk II agreement, it's also have been violated. The sense of this conflict, the reason of conflict, is very simple. Americans in 2014, their intelligence service overthrown last democratically elected president of Ukraine, imposed in her junta and illegal repressive regime with one goal, an idea, to crash Russian identity and to make anti-Russia from Ukraine, to make the conflict between Russia and Ukraine some kind of as conflict between Palestinians and Israelis.
Okay, before I wrap up my program, because we're running out of time, I have to ask you, Mr. Markov and Ms. Watkins, a very a question that I see that I have to ask before we wrap up. How will Trump's second term, from both your perspectives as president, shape the future support for Ukraine?
I don't think his support is going to be near the support that President Biden showed Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. And you need to all go by
Then this is the answer of why President Biden took this decision.
Right. You need to go by what Donald Trump has said, which he considers the end to the war, meaning that Vladimir Putin is able to take the territory and start to annex the entire country of Ukraine into Russian territory. That's what he said. He thinks ending the war means he is not going to be supportive financially of supporting Ukraine. He doesn't feel that they deserve any money and that the U.S. taxpayers should not be footing the bill for that. He has been very clear about that. So I'm going by his words, and I hope that you do as well.
So this is your comment about, that's why you think that President Biden took this decision, Ms. Watkins?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Markov, how do you read Trump's second term as president shape the future support for Ukraine?
We know that the main enemy of Donald Trump is not Biden. It's not even Democratic Party. It's so-called deep state. It's a big system of the American didn't change governmental bureaucratic institutions.
Sir, do you want to say and state now what you said is that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to be against Ukraine, not with Ukraine?
I think Donald Trump wants to have peace on Ukraine, and he will make pressure on the Russian leaders and Ukrainian leaders to stop the war and to come to the compromise. It's exactly what we suggested, is to have negotiation and about bilateral security and stopping the war. That's why I would say Donald Trump is a party of peace, and he will try to stop the war. And we're not fighting against Ukraine. We're fighting against criminal terroristic regime, which has been imposed by CIA of United States of America.
Sir, sorry, I have to wrap up this episode because I've run out of time. That was Sergei Markov, a political science professor and former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin from Moscow, and Lori A. Watkins, a former advisor to United States President Barack Obama from Washington. Thank you very much for your informative knowledge and your insights. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. Stay tuned for more exclusive stories here on Q News, and thanks for watching.